Um, I'd love to start with talking about your evolution because I mean, I've seen your handle. You're clearly a geek. You
Yeah.
love coding and everything to do with technology. So you've been on a journey from being an engineer all the way up to the giddy heights of massive companies. What was that pathway like for you? How did you evolve and how did you almost leave behind the technology parts of that and become a leader?
Yeah, so I had a bit of an upside down career actually. So I spent the first 10 years of I studied computer science at University of Bath, and part of why I went to Bath, I got in at Cambridge but chose not to go, was that Bath had a really great industry placement program, and I was an overseas student. I was paying a lot for my degree, and so I really wanted to be sure that I was going to have a job at the end of it. So getting some work experience during university felt like a great idea. And so I was a summer intern at Procter and Gamble in the summer of my first year of university, and I ended up being there for 10 years. So I started very young. I joined when I was 19 and left when I was 29. And that was very much a corporate IT type job. I did do engineering and then I became an architect. But a lot of it was about project management, product management, looking after big systems. I used to run the biggest SAP install in the world, but I'm okay now. And
You got over that one. Yeah, well done.
and so I think I actually moved out of being hands-on technical much earlier in my career than I really wanted to, or in retrospect would have preferred to. Partly because there wasn't a route up that didn't look like becoming a manager. And so I became a manager very young, and my first two direct reports were older than my dad, and I could just imagine his reaction to a
All right.
manager the age of his daughter. And it was a bit tough. But I was very resolute that if I had to be a manager, I refused to be bad at it. And so I went and looked for research and information about how to be good at this. And makes me a total nerd, but I have a favorite management book, which is First Break All the Rules, which is based on this huge Gallup study where they talk to hundreds of thousands of people, looking across industries, across all sorts of organizations and within organizations as well, looking for what made people high performing. But it actually reads like a list of things that will make people happy. And
Hmm.
that really appealed to me, that you could have high performance and fulfillment in the same breath. And so yeah, spent my first 10 years at P&G. P&G did a huge outsourcing whilst I was there. Almost everybody who was really technical went off to HP and to IBM. And I, ironically, had been put in quite a businessy role because they were worried I was too technical. And so I was on the wrong side of the line as an intern when the big separation happened. And so I stayed on the P&G side and ended up being one of the most technical people left on the P&G side. And so when they realized they'd outsourced a bit too much, I was the obvious person to take over a load of the technical work that came back in. And so yeah, I went from being an engineer and then really a more architectural role, had a few years of product and program and project management, and then was the leader of what was called application management, so this sort of SAP FICO area with a bunch of engineers. And then my final role was what was called a broadening assignment. So again, trying to make me more businessy, they gave me all of North European operations to look after, and that was not just what we think, DevOps style ops, but it was everything from like facilities and catering to the physical networks and the
Wow.
mobile networks and the laptops and everything that made an office or a plant or a research center. So I was responsible for about 11,000 employees in that last role and $100 million budget, which in retrospect, giving $100 million budget to a 27-year-old is absolutely mental. But one of the
Doesn't
advantages.
Justin Bieber talk about that? Doesn't he sort of say, like, this is what happens when you give a 27-year-old $400 million or something? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I and then I realized in that role that though I loved Procter and it was a fantastic place to learn leadership because it's incredibly indexed on leadership. They hire people who've shown early leadership potential and then they promote from within. And so the people who were running the company when I was an intern had started as graduates and spent 30 years there and now ran the company. And it was a fascinating environment. And I think P&G produces more C-level execs for other companies than any company in the world except for General Electric.
Wow.
And so it was a great environment to be in. But I realized that I used to joke that we weren't on the bleeding edge. We were on the sort of scabbing edge or healing edge of technology.
Okay.
We were only adopting things when it was really safe, and that felt a little off kilter to me. I really love tech, and I wanted to be closer to tech done modern ways in a really good standard, and to build some stuff that wasn't just add-ons to big box systems for a while. And so I left, and I was going to go to Amazon or Google, and my academic background is AI, so I'd been having conversations with Google for years. And then a guy called Tom Loosemore rang me up and said, "Hey, we're going to fix government. Come help us." And then he called my friends and got them to convince me to come and join the government digital service, because he was like, "Join Google whenever you like, but this is going to happen once and once only." And so I joined just as the alpha was finished for GovUK, and the beta team had been assembled, and then scaled that from 30 to 300 people in 9 months, which was very intense. I had 80 direct reports at one point, which was very, very intense. 80 one-to-ones a month is far too many. If
Yeah, I was going to say, I was bring that up. Yeah, that's your week gone completely, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. You have to do monthly one-to-ones in that situation. I was very proud to be part of the journey that built GovUK. I then got my disability diagnosis, took a bit of time out to deal with that, and then drifted around a little bit for a couple of years, and then did a medtech startup that went a bit wrong, actually. We stuck together as a team and formed a little product studio called Balloon, and because it was our analogy was that we were trying to have a hot air balloon together rather than individual parachutes. And then M&S hired us as a team, and then slowly convinced us to go in-house. And so that's the quite roundabout way that I ended up as CTO for M&S.com. I then went to Moo, and then to Monzo, and then to a company called Helix that did AI-driven drug discovery, and then on to Pleo. So I've been in CTO roles for about 10 years now, but actually my largest ever team I had at Procter & Gamble before I left, which was over 300 people. And that was a real exercise in scaling yourself as a leader and a manager. And that's one of the things that I've probably got a lot of opinions on now, is how do you move from being a great manager and leader of a team of 10 to a team of 300. There's quite a lot of steps in that journey, and that was really fascinating to navigate and to learn along the way.
And that's really what we're going to be diving into today.